Wind funneled through the concrete mouth of the loading dock. A delivery truck idled, exhaling diesel haze that turned the air the color of old nickels. I clipped my press badge to my jacket, pressed REC on a pocket recorder, and moved toward the shouting. Two men in dark suits tried to close a service elevator door. A young woman in a kitchen apron stood halfway inside, halfway out, eyes red, fists balled, shoulders shaking without sound. She met my eyes for a half second and looked away. A bodyguard stepped between her and the suits. He wore a plain black blazer, earpiece loop, hands low, broad shoulders, steady stance. The younger suit snapped, "Keep the corridor clear, crews, VIP only." The bodyguard glanced at the apron girl, then at the suits. He said nothing, but his jaw worked like he was grinding glass. A man in a gray work jacket stood near the dock ramp, watching. Older, square hands, dark hair graying at the temples. He slapped his palm to get attention, then moved his hands in a blur, fingers spelling, palms sweeping, a language of urgency. He was deaf. The bodyguard saw him and raised one hand. "Wait." The older man signed again. "Danger, office, time." He tapped his chest twice and pointed up. The bodyguard's eyes flicked to me. He pointed to his ear, then to the deaf man, then made a small motion, like typing. He wanted someone to read. I lifted my phone. I was not an interpreter. I knew only the bones of ASL, from covering protests and courtrooms. Still, the shape of it was plain. He had seen something. He was trying to say what it was. The suits dragged the elevator shut, and the apron girl's knuckles whitened as the doors met. I leaned toward the bodyguard and the deaf father without crossing into the private corridor. My voice stayed low. "I'm Press, Rhea Park. What's going on?" The bodyguard gave me a name, barely above a whisper. "Evan." He pointed up toward the mezzanine level. "Press event. Keep it moving," he added for the suit's sake, voice flat because that is what his job required. A text vibration ran across my phone screen. "Press conference begins in 15. Candidate expected to announce jobs program." Another message stacked on top. "Tip from hotel worker, something off. Service corridor near east offices." The deaf man tapped his chest. He pointed to the apron girl, now slumped against the elevator wall, hand curling around a paper napkin like a lifeline. He traced a ring on his finger, then pressed his fist against his chest, grinding. He drew a car box in the air and traced letters with a fingertip. 7KJ. I repeated the letters out loud. The bodyguard nodded. He understood more than he admitted. On my recorder, I said, "For record, loading dock at Hotel Palisade. Two suited men attempting to contain an incident. Witness with hearing impairment trying to communicate. Indicates something occurred near executive offices. Bodyguard present. Identifies as Evan." The suits noticed my voice. One of them tilted his chin toward me. "No press back here." He moved with the bored aggression of a man who never expected to be questioned. Evan turned his body just enough to block the suit's line of sight to me and the deaf father. In that half second, he signed back to the older man. Careful, halting shapes. I saw the letters EMIL. Then he corrected himself and spelled MIGUEL, nodded at him, and tapped the badge clipped inside his blazer pocket. Security. He signed something like "Wait safe." The older man exhaled, shoulders dropping an inch. Above us, music swelled. The campaign had begun its polished march. Below, a metal door squealed. A janitor pushed a cart, eyes down, moving into the dark shoebox of the corridor. On my phone screen, a new text from an anonymous number. "Check the mezzanine office. See second floor. Maintenance log. Names, Hales, Caro." Evan met my eyes. "If you're going up," he said quietly, "watch the corners." Then to the deaf father, "Come with me." He gestured to a safer spot behind the truck out of the suit's direct line. The deaf man nodded and followed, hands still moving, fear shaped into language. This is where my notes begin. What follows is exactly what I saw, recorded, or later verified with documents, timestamps, and sworn statements. Disclaimer. This story is a work of fiction. All characters and events are imaginary. Like and subscribe for more stories that challenge prejudice and celebrate courage. Campaign banners hung like new skin over old hotel wallpaper. White uplights made everything look surgical. Cameras floated near the stage like quiet planets. I threaded through, flashed my badge, and slid along a side wall toward a hallway marked "Staff Only." According to the press advisory, the candidate, Nathan Vale, would appear with his adult son and the city's Chamber of Commerce president. I noted the names and titles on the handout. I circled PR director, Brenda Caro. A hotel employee passing with a tray murmured, "Kitchen's spooked." Something happened near C office. He didn't wait for a reply. Eyes flicked over my badge, then down. At the mouth of the staff hallway, a man in a blazer with a gold hotel security pin leaned with a casualness that read like a wall. Name tag read T. Hales. He scrolled his phone. An access badge dangled from a belt loop, plastic edges rounded from too many swipes. I recognized him from prior stories on hotel labor disputes. Hales had a way of making doors feel heavier. Need a maintenance log, I said, sliding a pin behind my ear as if that made me official enough. Women in my line of work learn early that confidence is a key card. Hales smiled without teeth. Need a warrant is what you need. Press stays out of the back. From the stage, someone tapped a microphone. The room hushed. The candidate's silhouette took the light like it was made for him. Hales's eyes went toward the glow, then back to me. He shifted so his shoulder blocked the hall outright. Brenda Caro appeared from the staff hallway like a whisper turned into a person. Precise hair, neutral power suit, a stack of manila envelopes hugged to her chest. She clocked me in a glance, and the envelopes rebalanced slightly as if they weighed more now. "Press room is that way, Ms. Park," she said, pointing past me without looking. Her voice could have sliced paper. "We've got a very full program and no time for distractions." Behind her, a service door in the hall opened, and I caught the smell of stale coffee and a flash of a monitor showing camera feeds with timestamps blooming in green numerals. 2 seconds, 3. Then the door clicked shut and the smell of glossed paper and filming powder pulled me back into the press room. According to internal texts provided later by a hotel staffer at 6:41 p.m., Hales had received a message. "Keep C corridor clear. VIP issue. Caro signing NDAs." The message was from a number labeled B. Caro. My phone buzzed. A photo pinged in, grainy, taken at an angle. It showed Evan in the loading dock, one hand slightly up, the other open toward a man in a gray jacket. At the edge of the frame, I could see the apron girl's shoulder pressed into the elevator rail. The caption, "He's different. He listens." I went back down the corridor, past Hales, who stepped in for the perfunctory block. A side door labeled electrical had a loose latch. A service worker pushed through with a coil of cable, and I slid in his slipstream, murmured thanks, and found myself in a humming closet of panels and chalk-marked schedules. On the wall, clipped to a board, maintenance log, camera zones. I took a quick photo of the log. Entries listed by date and zone, initials scrawled beside them. Under today's date, Zone C2 East Offices, manual override 6:32-6:49 p.m., initials TH, authorization BC. Boots echoed in the hall. I pushed the door back until it was a breath from closed, watched through a slim wedge as Hales passed, thumb busy on his phone. The hum of the panels felt like a heartbeat in the walls. Back in the press room, the candidate's son stood just off stage, hands folded, a signet ring denting the finger above his knuckle into a pale crescent. His jaw worked like he was chewing his name. He laughed at something an aide said. The sound did not reach his eyes. The service stairwell smelled like wet cardboard. Strip lights buzzed. On the landing, I found Evan leaning against the wall, coiled wire of his earpiece visible against his neck. The deaf father, Miguel, stood at the bottom, hands tucked under his armpits, eyes on a fixed point as if focusing made words make sense. Evan's voice was quiet. "You should not be here." I lifted my recorder. "I'm not leaving without understanding what I saw." He nodded at the metal steps. "Sit then. 1 minute." Miguel looked up as we sat. Evan touched his own chest. "Evan." He pointed to me, "Rhea." Then he tapped his own heart and splayed his fingers outward. A gesture I recognized. Trust. He was asking for it and offering it, with the economy of men who don't waste motion. Miguel signed, sharp and clean. He drew a rectangle in the air, door, tapped a spot on an invisible map, east, raised 2 fingers, 2 people. He made a ring shape, twisted. He raised his eyebrow, then flattened his hand like a barrier, security. He dragged his index finger across his palm, the old sign for money. I translated in pieces. "You saw 2 people near an east office. One with a ring, security blocked you. Someone offered money?" Miguel nodded, eyes steady. He cross-checked my signs with Evan's slower ones. When he signed again, he spelled A-N-A. He tapped where his heart would be, then made a small cradle shape. "His daughter." "Anna," I repeated. "Your daughter." Miguel exhaled. He crossed both hands in front of his chest and pressed in. "No." He pointed up, then touched his own eyes. "Saw." He opened his right hand, palm toward me, and pushed forward. "Stop." He sliced his left hand above his right. "No." He traced 7KJ in the air again. Evan's jaw tensed. I saw the round dent on his cheek where the earpiece wire pressed skin, according to a text that later surfaced from the hotel PR chat. At 6:55 p.m., someone wrote, "Father is staging near dock. Keep him away from press. Bring him to conference room B with interpreter and paperwork." "What paperwork?" I asked, keeping my tone even. Evan looked at the stairs as if answers lived in the metal. "Non-disclosure agreements," he said. "Caro carries them like first aid." He paused, then looked at me. "You didn't hear that from me." From the stairwell door came footfalls. The apron girl, Anna, stood there now, face washed with water but eyes still swollen. A woman in a charcoal blazer hovered behind her with a manicured smile that died the moment she saw me. "Ms. Soto, let's get you somewhere quiet," the woman said. "I'm Brenda. We can sort this all out." Miguel stepped up 2 stairs, put his hand out between Brenda and Anna. He signed, fast and fierce. No papers, no money, police, truth. Brenda's smile didn't crack. She tilted her head toward Evan. "Control access, please." Her voice was sugar that left a sting. Evan did not move. He looked at Anna. "You okay if I call someone who is not on their payroll?" he asked. Plain. Anna's gaze slid to the floor, then to her father, then to me. She nodded once. "Rhea," Evan said, eyes now on me. "If you have an interpreter, now is the time. And call someone who knows chain of custody. This is going to get ugly fast." We found an empty conference room with folding chairs and bad coffee. The fluorescent lights made everyone look sleep-deprived. I propped my phone on a water pitcher and pressed REC. I had a number for a certified court interpreter from a previous story. I dialed and braced for voicemail. Against the odds, she picked up. 10 minutes, she said. Bring coffee." Brenda appeared in the doorway with an envelope and a practiced frown. She spoke softly, words arranged like furniture to control the room. "We want to support you, Anna. Let's avoid chaos. This agreement provides a stipend for counseling and time off. No one is forcing anything." Miguel signed, and his hands were a storm. Evan watched, caught pieces, then deferred. He knew enough to know when he didn't know enough. I translated what I could. "He says you are trying to buy silence. He says he called security, and they ignored him. He says he saw a man go in with Anna." Brenda kept her face smooth. "I am not going to litigate rumors in a hotel room," she said. "There are processes. Dignity matters." "Dignity is not a check," I said. Then I moved my recorder so the red light was toward her. "For the record, what are your titles and who authorized the camera override in Zone C2 between 6:32 and 6:49 p.m.? She blinked. Just once. Slow. No idea what you're talking about. She set the envelope on the table and retreated one step. "Take your time." She left it between us like a bomb that smiled. The interpreter arrived in a navy cardigan and practical shoes, hair in a bun, cheeks flushed from running. She introduced herself, showed her certification, and sat with her notebook open. We set a boundary. Interpreter would voice Miguel's signs and note the difference between things he saw and things he inferred. Names would be spelled to avoid error. Miguel's story came as motion and air and minutes pinned in the mind. He had been by the East offices ready to meet his daughter after shift. He saw a man with a ring brush past Anna and lead her toward a door. He knocked. He heard no words but felt vibration through the door of movement inside. He flagged hotel security, who told him to wait. He waited. A woman came with papers. She said it was a misunderstanding. He asked for the police. She said there was no need. He took out a small black notebook, pages inked with implacable block letters, and wrote down the plate he'd seen earlier on a black SUV, 7KJ29E. He wrote the time, 6:36. He wrote the hallway camera's green clock, 6:41. He wrote the word, ring. The interpreter's voice was steady, the way you'd want it if you were on a wire between buildings. Evan sat in the corner, back to the wall, eyes on the door. Anna spoke then, face turned down so her words fell into her lap. She said the man had asked her to show him where the East meeting room was. She said he had closed the door. She said when she tried to leave, he blocked her path. She did not fill in the rest. The interpreter did not. I did not ask. The silence in the room grew arms and held us by the shoulders. "Police," Evan said, breaking the stillness. "Now, I'll get them without going through hotel channels." Brenda's head tilted into the doorway again, as if she had a key to our air. She saw the interpreter in the notebook. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "I hope you're not making a mistake that will cost you your job, Mr. Cruz," she said. Evan's face did not register the hit. He had already pulled out his phone and called a direct line I recognized, the precinct's duty sergeant whom I'd interviewed last winter. He gave his name and location, left out no detail. The duty sergeant sent 2 officers. They came through the loading dock, not the lobby, to avoid the campaign's cameras. I watched the shape of the night shift settle over their faces as they took statements in sober, measured layers. According to the incident report filed at 9:12 p.m., the officers obtained a preliminary statement from Anna, a signed and interpreted statement from Miguel, and photographs of the maintenance log showing a manual override to Zone C2 East offices. According to that same report, the hotel's head of security balked at providing the surveillance archive, citing a technical issue. The officers noted the resistance. I emailed the maintenance log photo to myself, to Rhea P., investigations, to a trusted editor who owed me a favor, and to a cloud account with a nondescript name. Then I printed 2 copies on the hotel business center printer. The attendant gave me the kind of look that means this is above my pay grade. In the hall, Hales blocked me away from the server room, with his body like a piece of furniture that had decided to be an obstacle. "Private area," he said. He did not meet my eyes. Evan stood by, arms folded. He did not say a word until the officers asked for the PR director. Brenda arrived in a tone of perfume and postponement. She said the campaign respected all workers. She said the incident would be handled internally. She said NDAs were standard practice in cases of workplace disputes. The officer asked her again for the footage. Brenda asked for a lawyer. At 8:34 p.m., according to text records later obtained, Brenda messaged a number labeled NV Jr. "Don't come downstairs, I'm handling." By 8:41 p.m., my phone lit with unknown numbers. One was polite. "This is a misunderstanding. Perhaps we can discuss placement for your story that keeps everyone safe." Another was not polite. "Stick your nose in and it gets broken." Evan was called into a back office. When he came out, his jaw looked tighter, but his voice was even. "I've been relieved of duty," he said. "They cited insubordination." He handed over his earpiece to Hales, who took it without ceremony. Brenda watched with arms crossed, the envelope from earlier still in her hand like a prop in a play that everyone had seen too many times. "You can still walk out of here with a reference," she said to Evan. "Or you can walk out with a story that ends badly." Evan did not answer. He looked at Anna and Miguel, then at me. He put a small object on the table, his phone. On the screen, photos he had taken of the monitor with the camera feeds, timestamps glowing like the eyes of an animal in the dark. On another photo, the maintenance log, close-up, initials clear enough to read. He nodded once. "Copies are already uploaded," he said. "Chain of custody is everything." I asked him, "Why are you doing this?" Evan answered without poetry. "My sister was deaf. People used to talk around her like she wasn't there." He looked at Miguel. "I learned enough to make sure I never did that." He looked back at me. "Doesn't mean I'm fluent, but I can listen." We moved to a nonprofit legal clinic 3 blocks away. A lamplit first-floor office with mismatched chairs and a receptionist who knew exactly why people arrived after hours. The attorney on duty, Priya Desai, looked like she'd been awake since last year and still found kindness to spare. We laid out the facts like tools on a bench. Priya made a chart of evidence, statements, and a flow of custody. Who had touched what? Who had seen it? Who could attest to when the thing existed? She called the State Attorney General's Integrity Unit and left a message that began with the words, "Potential evidence tampering at a politically sensitive site." The interpreter returned. Miguel signed his statement again, this time in full, with dates, times, and clear delineation between what he saw and what he was told. The interpreter scribed what she voiced. Miguel read the written statement line by line with his finger, eyes narrowing where the English wobbled. He corrected it. He signed his name carefully, each letter an anchor. Anna signed next to him, hand tremoring as she wrote. Evan witnessed, then Priya notarized. I uploaded the documents to the same cloud and encrypted a copy for the Attorney General's office. I sent a link to my editor with a line, "Report to publish pending legal review." He replied with a single word, "Careful." Priya called me into the corner to speak off the main record. She kept her voice just above a whisper. "Expect pressure," she said. "They'll try to discredit him because he is deaf and working class. They'll call the bodyguard disgruntled. They'll say you're hungry for clicks. Our job is to keep the process clean. No saviors, just facts." Miguel walked around the clinic like a man measuring the size of a room he'd rebuilt. On a wall hung an oil painting of hands signing the words for hope. He stood in front of it a long time. At 11:03 p.m., Priya's office phone rang. Caller ID, city attorney. The voice at the other end asked for a reason not to treat this as a personnel dispute. Priya said, "Because surveillance evidence appears to have been manually overridden while an incident occurred. Because a sworn witness with an interpreter has identified a potential suspect by distinctive jewelry and association. Because a signed NDA obtained under pressure in a stairwell is not consent." When we stepped back into the cold, the night seemed to hold the city's breath. Evan offered Miguel and Anna a ride. I declined. I had 2 more calls to make, one to the precinct, one to a state investigator who owed me a call back. On the clinic's front step, Evan paused as if listening to a frequency only he could hear. He turned to me. "You put my name in print," he said. "Make sure the part you tell is that I didn't do this alone." He nodded toward Miguel and Anna and the interpreter and Priya. "That matters." By morning, the story had started to budge. The day, my piece went live with a headline that read, like a question we were not sure if we wanted answered. Maintenance override and witness statements. Raise questions at Vail campaign event. The top image was a still of the maintenance log, initials circled, timestamps clear. I did not publish the frame with Anna or Miguel. I described them. I protected them. In the fourth paragraph, I wrote, according to the maintenance log photographed by this reporter at Hotel Palisade and reviewed by 2 independent security experts, Camera Zone C2, East offices, was manually overridden between 6:32 and 6:49 p.m. by the head of hotel security, with authorization initials matching those of the campaign's public relations director. During this window, a kitchen worker alleges she was prevented from leaving an office by a prominent attendee, according to her preliminary statement. Her deaf father, present at the scene, provided a sworn, interpreted statement. Within an hour, my email filled with words sharp enough to cut. One from the campaign called the report defamatory, another from a law firm threatened injunctions, a third, from a burner, recycled the old script, why defend liars? Why ruin a good man? I made a separate file for the threats, archived them like you might archive weather. Evan texted me a photo of the notice he had received. Effective immediately, employment terminated. Offense, insubordination. He added no comment. He sent a second photo, a coffee cup on a windowsill, rain sliding down the glass behind it. The caption, not the worst day to need a plan. Anna sent a message through Priya, no press interviews, boundaries. I replied that I understood. My job was not to draft her into a cause. It was to build a record sturdy enough to carry weight. By midday, the campaign held a brief press availability. Nathan Vale spoke of due process and respect. Brenda stood behind him, eyes neutral, hair helmet flawless. The candidate's son was not present. According to the pool feed, he had flown out early for a business meeting. A labor coalition called for a city oversight hearing. A disability rights group issued a statement. Deaf witnesses are witnesses. Accessibility is not optional. The hashtag traveled with a kind of gravity this city remembers when it wants to. My editor called. He sounded like a man balancing a glass on a moving train. Advertisers are nervous, he said. Donor calls, you sure of your chain? I told him yes, he said. Then keep going. The oversight chamber was a semicircle of wood and microphones that made voices sound official even when they weren't. Cameras perched like birds. People dressed their convictions in suits. I sat with my notebook and the interpreter on my left, Evan on the aisle seat, Priya with a box of documents stacked like a brick wall at her feet. Miguel and Anna sat a row ahead, hands clasped in a braided braid. Councilmember Ortiz chaired. She was known for a voice that could press a crease into steel. She opened, then called the first witness, Miguel Soto. He walked to the table with careful steps, placed his palms on the wood, and looked at the council without fear. The interpreter sat beside him, fingers resting like coiled rope. Miguel lifted his hands. He signed his name, then the ruler-straight timeline he had kept in his head and on paper. His arrival, the ring, the office door, the knock, the call to security, the woman with papers, the refusal, the wait, the maintenance log he could not read but had seen photographed by a reporter. He described the signet ring, the oval face with initials, the way the wearer held his hand. He signed he was not speculating. He signed he was reporting what his eyes saw. The interpreter's voice did not waver. In that room, her voice was the thin bridge carrying the weight of a man's memory. In that room, his hands were floodlights turned onto a corridor no one wanted to see. Brenda took the table next. She spoke of process and rumor and restraint. She said there were technical issues with cameras that night. She said overrides were routine. Ortiz asked for logs. Priya slid them across. Brenda examined them and frowned, as if disappointed by the handwriting. Hales appeared, called by the committee. He shrank a little under the lights, sweat beading under his hairline. Councilmember Ortiz held up a printed copy of the maintenance log with his initials. Did you manually override Zone C2? He said yes. Who authorized it? He hesitated. I don't recall. Ortiz leaned forward. Your initials note authorization BC. He swallowed and said, I follow orders. Evan testified last among our cluster. He wore the only suit he owned. It fit like an apology. He sat straight and spoke low. He stated his job duties. He said what he saw at the loading dock. He said he called the precinct. He said he took photos because, in his words, cameras forget what they saw when they need to. Paper doesn't. He did not mention his sister. He did not invite applause. He answered questions cleanly, then stopped. According to subpoenaed call logs introduced by the committee, between 6:29 and 6:52 p.m., there were 6 calls from a number associated with Brenda to a security vendor, 3 to hotel security, and 1 to a number associated with the candidate's son. Brenda's lawyer objected to public characterization. Ortiz thanked him and moved on. At the back of the room, I watched a shift I have learned to recognize. The moment a story moves from rumor to public record, it does not guarantee justice. It guarantees weight. It guarantees that when someone says, "This did not happen," there is paper that answers, "Yes, it did." Results dripped, then poured. The city attorney announced charges, not about what happened behind a closed door. That question would move at a different speed in a different court, if at all, but about what happened to the truth. Obstruction of justice, witness tampering, evidence tampering. The hotel issued a statement that used the phrase learning opportunity and retired Hales with a package generous enough to make quiet look like a career. Brenda resigned from the campaign. The candidate postponed his jobs program announcement and took questions he did not like. The son disappeared into a house behind a gate. He issued his own statement through counsel. "I did nothing wrong." Miguel returned to work at the auto shop where he tuned engines by feel and sight. On Saturday mornings, he built birdhouses with scrap cedar and screwed them to chain-link fences where sparrows jittered and sang. Anna took time off with pay forced into a line item labeled moral necessity. She started therapy with a counselor who signed. Evan took a job consulting for Priya's clinic, designing safety protocols that prioritized actual humans over optics. He trained a course of volunteers in basic ASL. He wrote the first rule on the whiteboard in thick blue marker. Ask if they want help. Don't assume they need it. The second rule was shorter, believe. I took more calls than usual. The city has a way of opening its palm when a story finds a vein. People told me about small rooms where big things are decided and how the doors could be lighter than they looked if you pushed at the hinges instead of the handle. I wrote when I could. I slept when I had to. On a gray morning in the clinic courtyard, Miguel built a bench. He leveled the legs with shims. He planed the edges until they fit the hand. He signed to Evan, who stood by with a socket set and a coffee. The interpreter had gone home. The language they shared was two men who had stood in a room and refused a quiet that wasn't silence. Anna brought out 3 chipped mugs and set them on the new bench. She signed "thank you" with both hands, fingers brushing her chin, and then placed her palm on the bench as if blessing it. She looked at Evan. "You listened," she signed. He nodded. He lifted his hands and shaped clumsy signs with the care of a person building a bridge out of rope and faith. "You spoke," he signed back. She smiled then. A small thing with the light of a door opened. I replayed the hearing footage that night, not for the performance, but for one motion. While Miguel testified, he paused and signed a sentence that made the room still. The interpreter voiced it with a breath before the words, the way you do before carrying something heavy. They looked at me like my silence was their cover. I am not quiet. I am speaking in the language I have. That was the hinge. Not a confession, not a blow. A man fusing the weight of being ignored into a statement that could not be rerouted. People in power were counting on his silence to be a wall. It turned out to be a window. Evan was not hired to open windows. He was hired to manage doors. In my notebook, I had underlined a note about him. Just a bodyguard. In the weeks after, that line changed shape. He became the person who took a risk to keep a record honest, who understood that protection sometimes means protecting the truth from the way it is handled. In an exit interview with a human resources manager who wanted to salvage an ending, he had been asked if he regretted it. He said what he told me on the clinic steps. "People used to talk around my sister like she wasn't there. I promised her I wouldn't do that to anybody if I could help it." He shrugged. Then he signed a word he knew would land, slow and thick. "Enough." The last scene I keep is the bench. Miguel's hands smelling like cedar. Anna's shoulders not pulled up around her ears. Evan, with a bolt between finger and thumb. No medals, no stage, just a place to sit without looking over your shoulder. In a city that was too good at tying knots, here was a knot undone, strand by strand. On my recorder, I left one line for the edit. According to the report, the camera was turned off. According to the witness, the lights were still on. According to the truth, you can't hide everything, not forever. And the sentence I wrote on a post-it and stuck to my monitor, silence is not consent. It is often the bruise left by being ignored. We are obliged to look. Disclaimer. This story is a work of fiction. All characters and events are imaginary. Like and subscribe for more stories that challenge prejudice and celebrate courage.